Hey everyone, this is Goober, and today we're going to talk about Red Faction Crusade, the cancelled sequel to Red Faction Guerrilla that you've probably never heard of before. Red Faction Crusade was a cancelled Red Faction game that was designed to be a direct sequel to Red Faction Guerrilla. Now, if you've played Red Faction Guerrilla or you're familiar with it, you may be wondering how they were planning on expanding on that story. They pretty much wrapped up all the loose ends at the end of the campaign, so where did it go? Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but before we dive straight into Red Faction Crusade, I just wanted to take a quick second and go over the main themes of the other Red Faction games for a little bit of context. So in the first game in the series, we're overthrowing the evil and abusive Ultor Corporation that's exploiting its workers on Mars. In the second game in the series, Red Faction 2, we're overthrowing Chancellor Victor Sopot's totalitarian government regime. In Red Faction Guerrilla, the third game in the series, we're overthrowing the Earth Defense Force that came in as saviors at the end of the first game, but have now become an occupying military presence. And in the fourth game in the series, Red Faction Armageddon, we're defeating Adam Hale, his army of cultists, and an ancient alien race on Mars. Now, how would you like to take a guess at what the main theme of Red Faction Crusade was going to be, given that this game was replaced by Red Faction Armageddon as the fourth game in the series? Well, if you guessed defending the Martian population against an invading army from Earth bent on genocide of the Martian people, then you'd be correct. The main storyline of Red Faction Crusade was to revolve around an invading army of high-tech religious fanatics from Earth wage a genocidal war against Mars as a form of revenge. Now, you may be asking, revenge for what? Mars didn't do anything to Earth. Well, to properly understand that, we need to go back to what the Red Faction Guerrilla storyline was at the time that Red Faction Crusade was started. At that point, one of the main plot points of Red Faction Guerrilla was to involve an EDF plan to crash the Martian moon Deimos into the planet to aid in terraforming. Now, this had been an EDF plan for a while, and they were planning on crashing it into the opposite side of the planet from the colony. After the revolution got off the ground, however, the EDF changed course and decided that they wanted to crash the moon into the colony to kill everyone.
Terminate all Red Faction insurgents.
What about the civilians, sir?
They're expendable.
So your job as Alec Mason was to stop this and save everyone, basically. So to do this, you enlisted the help of the Marauders, who are former Ultor scientists that went deep underground after the events of the first game. The Marauders were to help Alec Mason and the Red Faction in foiling the EDF plan, but they basically backstabbed you. The instructions they gave you to stop Deimos from crashing into the colony instead sent Deimos off its orbit and on a collision course with Earth. Deimos is pretty big, so this would have caused an extinction-level event on Earth, which I'm speculating was the Marauders' ultimate plan of getting payback at the Earth Defense Force for forcing them underground. In any event, the Red Faction Guerrilla story was to end with Alec Mason and the Red Faction effectively getting duped and killing a few billion people accidentally. That probably didn't play too well with focus groups. Anyway, Red Faction Crusade was to take place about 50 years later and would continue with this story. In Red Faction Crusade, the people of Earth who were decimated after Deimos collided with the planet spent 50 years developing the technology to return to Mars for their revenge. Red Faction Crusade was to be an open-world, mostly underground third-person shooter, which used a hub system to develop interconnected areas where different events would take place, similar to Crimson Sky's High Road to Revenge, which Red Faction Crusade's lead designer David Abzug had worked on previously. Now, I'm showing a lot of footage in the background from Red Faction Armageddon, and I'm doing that because Red Faction Armageddon was what Red Faction Crusade became. We're going to talk about how that happened and everything in a second, but before that I just wanted to show you a quick little video clip. This is the only footage that we have of Red Faction Crusade. It comes from a presentation that Volition senior producer Greg Donovan did at GDC 2015. Looks a lot like Red Faction Armageddon, doesn't it? Just with no aliens. But we'll get to that. So from what I've been able to gather, there were two primary reasons why Red Faction Crusade wasn't announced nor released the way that it was originally planned. The first and probably most direct reason was that Red Faction Guerrilla's storyline changed significantly to completely eliminate the plot point about Deimos. After this, the then Red Faction Crusade team was left with a choice. Initially, the plan was to basically make the same game, it's just the religious fanatics that were invading Mars had much less motivation than they originally did because, well, Earth wasn't destroyed. They were still going to continue with the open world concept, the hub-based design, and basically make the same game that they would have before. Just this time, instead, the fanatics came to Mars because Mars kept thumbing their nose at Earth rather than destroyed Earth. And then,
THQ.
I was going to summarize what happened here, but then I realized that Greg Donovan and David Abzug from Volition did a better job explaining it than I probably would, so here.
Then the team received some notes from a newly hired creative director at THQ. One of the motifs of these notes were get aliens at the game. At the time, the team was like, okay, thanks for the notes, these are great, it makes sense, but certainly these can't be a mandate, right? We're 2 months away from production. The team kind of ignored these things and just went back to work. THQ went through some management changes, and that creative director became an executive vice president. The team received some more notes, and the gist of those was, did you think I was joking about the aliens?
We got an email that, am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Go for it.
We got an email that said, and I quote, "Did you think I was fucking kidding about the aliens?"
So I did some digging. Now, to be completely clear, this is entirely speculation, totally unconfirmed, but I'm pretty certain, based on the timelines and the chains of events that I've been able to dig up from various sources, that the creative director turned executive vice president that they're referring to here is Danny Bilson, who was appointed THQ's executive vice president in charge of core games June 24th, 2009. This would have been in the middle of Red Faction Crusade's development cycle, but before they moved into major production, and definitely way before they went public with any announcement. Oh, also, at the same time THQ effectively ordered them to change a fundamental aspect of the game that they were working on, they also dropped something else.
And there was also a really important footnote to the whole add aliens things. It was also, and you need to bring in the game by 6 months. There was a new plan, as you can imagine. There was some scrambling and consternation and people trying to figure out what are we going to do here. The solution out of necessity was make the game linear, take it fully underground, because linearity would be easier underground, and get the aliens in-game.
And the rest is history, because we all know what happened after this. Red Faction Armageddon was made, it was an okay game, but it was not received well, and shortly thereafter THQ shelved the series. But now the series has new life. When THQ went bankrupt, the rights to the Red Faction series were picked up by Nordic Games, who subsequently released a remastered version of Red Faction Guerrilla before transferring the rights to Koch Media, who just happened to be the parent company of Red Faction's original developer Volition, now known as Deep Silver Volition. So I guess my point is, if anyone from Koch Media or Volition is watching this video, please make this game. I'll play it, and I'm sure a lot of other people will too, especially if it's first person. And that is everything I've been able to find out about Red Faction Crusade. So what do you think? Do you think that would have been a better game than Red Faction Armageddon, or are you happy with the direction that they chose? Let me know down in the comments, and feel free to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and you want to get alerts when I put out future videos. I'll also take a quick second to mention the Red Faction community. We've got an active Red Faction community on Discord, and I'll put a link down in the description to join that community. If you like the Red Faction series at all, I'd highly encourage you to join. See you next time, everyone.